Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Decentralized Economy, part of the SingularityNet video blog series. We're very excited to present to you an episode on the state of cryptocurrency, and we have a couple of all-stars here I'm going to introduce in just a second. As we all know, unless you've been living in a hole somewhere, we're in an exciting time for cryptocurrency, DeFi, fintech, and emerging tech as a whole. We're going to talk a lot about on this particular episode the state of cryptocurrency, about where we're at with the cryptocurrency market, where it's going, and you're going to get the inside knowledge from a couple of players, David Marshall and Matt Land, who have a tremendous amount of experience, have been very successful as of late. They're both partners at Marshland Capital. They'll talk a little bit about that and some of the investments they've made recently that have done extremely well. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your time.
And thanks for having us.
I'm excited about this. I've been reading up on your backgrounds. Matt, been looking at some of your content on YouTube, which I'll talk about in a second. Let me just do a brief intro for both of you, and then we'll jump into a few questions and learn about your background. So David, if you don't mind, David Marshall, I'll start with you. A partner along with Matt at Marshland Capital. You've been a prolific cryptocurrency investor. You spent 20 years in the private placement side of finance, and you do about 10 to 15 private placements a year. And you said earlier before the call, you've done about 20 this year. So you've ramped up. I guess it's an exciting time and a lot of good investments out there. Previous, you were a fund manager for private equity at Celestial Group. And then you got your start cutting your teeth in the emerging markets for private equity in EMEA and the UK. And of course, you have your MBA as well. So I'm sure there's a lot more. We're going to dig into your journey to cryptocurrency. But thank you so much, David, for being here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the intro.
Absolutely. Matt Land, better known on YouTube at least as OhHeyMatty. You're an investor, you're an influencer, you're an advisor, also a partner at Marshland Capital. You have been a strategic advisor for multiple digital asset funds. You're also, as I mentioned, a YouTube personality. You've created a lot of great videos, hundreds of videos actually, with some pretty astute guests in the industry over the past 3 years. And of course, you have your software engineering background as well with your BS in computer science from Rowan University. So Matt, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, definitely a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to interview. As you know, my background, we talked a little bit before the call. I'm CEO at Singularity Studio, the enterprise decentralized AI company. Also had a few exits in blockchain as well. Besides this, I run the Los Angeles chapter for BitAngels, one of the larger blockchain investor networks, and I advise, a fair amount of AI companies. But I'm really excited to learn so much from you about this cryptocurrency market. So we'll jump right in. David, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear about, and same for you, Matt, after David, if you could, I'd love to hear about how'd you get here? Your journey, and of course, along the way, please talk about Marshland Capital and what it is and what you focus on, but how did you personally get in the space, and how's your journey been to get here?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. So yeah, it's been quite the journey. I am actually 45 now. Even have grown-up kids, which is quite the challenge for anybody that goes through the kind of teenager and sort of phase. So, if I go back a number of years, I started off really actually as a sportsman. I was a football player. I guess Americans would describe it as soccer, but yeah, I was taken up as a young player and actually got professional contracts. And then just through, I guess, missed opportunity, I kind of moved away from that when I was relatively young. But I had some exposure to the kind of the investment space because, sports people tend to have a fair bit of capital. And that kind of gave me kind of an inroad into, I guess, the investment side of the world. And I was fascinated by it. My father was an entrepreneur, and one of the things I did as a child was sort of skim through the pink sheets, which in those days is kind of like the financial kind of stocks and shares guide. So I've always been kind of interested in that. I got my first real opportunity to get into the corporate world, and I worked in corporate foreign exchange for people like American Express, Travelex, and Western Union, to name a few. And when I got my first opportunity to work in the traditional investment space, I kind of jumped at it. And over the years, it's given me the opportunity to travel extensively. I've lived in Australia, US, a number of different places around the world, and my kind of real big move into the traditional kind of fund management space was through a fund and I was actually based out of Central America, Panama, for a little while, building out some of their divisions, and that kind of got me into the Celestial Group toward the back end of my career, where I was very fortunate enough to be able to head up an emerging markets division, and that kind of gave me the exposure to what we now know as the FANG stocks, and we managed to invest in a lot of those big companies. One being Skype and a few others at the very, very early stages before they got the kind of big merger and acquisitions and bought out by the big players we know of today. And so that was kind of my first introduction, and I guess I got really excited about technology companies. It was kind of really kind of boring before, the traditional kind of big infrastructure companies like, I guess, IBM and stuff. They were building stuff, but it was kind of boring. And then we had this new wave of, technology development, and, it was exciting. It was all about kind of UI and front end and stuff. And that kind of really piqued my interest to a point where, when I decided to leave in 2009, came back to the UK, I really wanted to get more involved in technology. And I had the opportunity to study, and I had the chance to do my MBA. I also worked with a couple of different startups, one being Linux IT or Linux IT in the UK, and that gave me some real insight to open source technologies. And so when I heard about blockchain or Bitcoin and stuff in those days, because that was pretty much all it was, that almost felt like the perfect hybrid between all of the traditional investment I had and the experience and the network and the kind of technology on the open source side. So I just jumped in as soon as I really had the opportunity. I got really heavily involved in crypto, and I've never really looked back. I think my biggest challenge is always finding the alignment with people. And, I kind of met Matt sort of 3-4 years ago, I think the first time. And then more recently, we started working together, and then we just literally went full bore ahead and took all of the infrastructure, the experience, the networks that we had, and we're really excited with the future with Marshland Group, and all the verticals that come off of that, which we can talk a little bit more. But hopefully that's a good introduction.
I didn't know that you had that professional athlete background. Good for you, and also good for you to go through. I don't know how many teenage years you've gone through with your children. How many kids do you have?
I have 3 now. My youngest is 12, Brooke. My middle is Tiana. She's 16. That's a tough period for a dad who's got a daughter, for anyone that's been there. And then my oldest is Brad. He's 22, and he's I think he's 21 actually. I think he's 22 this year though. And touch wood, he's literally giving me no trouble at all. So I'm grateful I've got him in the house,
Yeah,
to balance things out a bit.
I've got one Brad's age, Alexia, and daughter, obviously. And hey, the reason I bring that up is you're looking good for 45, going through now 3 teenage years. So good for you. You've weathered that really well. I'm going to get back to kind of that seminal moment or moments, because obviously you had this, you were in the open source side, and you had the finance background with your dad, and it's all those things kind of collectively brought you to where you are today. So I have a question for you, but I'll jump to Matt first. Thank you for that, David. Matt, I'd love to hear how'd you get here? Obviously, you have the computer science background, and that's obvious. But and then you have the online personality background that's been so popular. How did you get to where you are today? What's your journey been like?
Yeah, so I guess in the late 2000s, I had gone to school for computer science. I definitely had some rough years in the early years of my my adolescence. I'm 33. A little bit younger than David. I do have one child recently born, about 1 year, 3 months or so. Just had his checkup today. Thank you. But yeah, so I've always had maybe the best word would be anti-establishment type of mentality for myself. But as you grow up, I think that changes a little bit for a lot of people. You start out from one perspective and then evolve over time as you become more integrated into the system, I suppose. But yeah, so I had a background in computer science. I worked in software quality assurance engineering for about 5+ years. I was a Selenium architect developer, basically doing page modeling, quality gate control. Worked with a healthcare startup that was working in the slow and autistic disability space. They were providing a software as a service company. So surprisingly enough, at that time, I think that they were the only solution at that time that were offering EI records and EI billing for different agencies that were providing like PT and OT services around the country. I think they had said that as of like 2008, 2010, everything in that industry was still on paper. So they were making a big transition. There pretty much no other competition at that time. So they were on the forefront of being able to provide electronic records and billing for these agencies, which was a huge transition for them during probably the boom of the SaaS industry as a whole. That company I left in 2018. Around the same time, they actually sold themselves to Constellation Software, which is a multi-billion-dollar company, I believe, out of Canada. I don't recall exactly where they're at. But yeah, I went full time into crypto in 2018. But in 2013, I think, is when I probably got full bore into cryptocurrency. I was trying to become a professional poker player at the time. I'm really big on like game theory and all that sort of stuff. So I was making a big push for that. I've actually played in the WSOP 2 or 3 times now, the $10,000 event. One year I got to play with Ray Romano, which was pretty cool. It's an amazing event. Anyone can show up with $10,000 and you meet all these big celebrities, both from the traditional and poker space. But that was kind of my first taste of crypto because there was an event called Black Friday in 2011, 2012, somewhere around that time period. And essentially what happened is that Poker Stars and Full Tilt Poker, who were the primary online service providers for the poker boom that had encapsulated most of the 2000s with the Chris Moneymaker run and a few others. And there's a lot of people in crypto that are from this background as well, from poker. But basically all the sites had to get taken offshore because Full Tilt Poker was running like this Ponzi scheme and the DOJ had shut them out. They called it Black Friday. And since then, we had these like really shady third-party poker sites like ACR and Ignition and Bovada and just basically people who were offering services to Americans, but had a really tough time getting banking services given to them because the UIGEA Act made it impossible for them to use traditional credit card and banking services to fund their websites. So when Bitcoin became a lot more popular and more specifically more stable, it became a go-to option for them. Now I think ACR is offering like 150 cryptocurrencies, including Ethereum and Bitcoin and the major ones. So I was on the forefront of needing cryptocurrency services to prevent my government from dictating what I can and cannot do with my own money. It's not illegal to play online poker at that time, but I was prevented from using their banking services, even though I was using my own money. So it was a great solution at that time, and I was actually using it for, as I like to refer to it, as utility. Right, that was the pure utility of Bitcoin. It's immutable, it's censorship resistant. As long as I have it, it's really hard for you to tell me what I can do with my money. It's very discreet. So even if it did become outlawed of some sort, it'd be hard for them to try and find it at my home. And this really comes back to the principle of what I was saying a little bit with the anti-establishment thing is that I'm a little bit central, I don't like saying libertarian. I don't like putting labels on it, but I'm very conservative when it comes to government intervention on certain things. I believe in bigger platforms or whatever. So from there in 2017, I up until that point, I had been very big on making hobbyist content for whatever I was really passionate about. Up until that point, I was doing some poker streams on the early stages of Twitch. I was actually one of the first 5 channels to ever create a poker Twitch channel. The reason being was because Twitch had outlawed online poker for some time in terms of streaming because of their TOS. But when online regulated poker started in New Jersey and in Nevada, and now I think we're up to 4 or 5 states at this point, we were able to get our channel approved and go through the process with the moderator over there, One Rum Cake, who was kind of, him and Jay Carver were kind of making this big push. So I had started doing digital content and learning the ropes on how that works. Twitch is a much different game than YouTube, and the game has evolved much more since I've actually left, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I started doing some hobbyist content on YouTube and cryptocurrency because in 2017, I started to see that there was a lot of things going on in terms of investments with these ICOs before the SEC regulation came down in August of 2017, and even well past that. That didn't really stop anyone leading into 2018. about the middle of 2018 until the music kind of slowed down in the late summer. But as always, you know, I like to make content, hobbyist content on things that I'm really passionate about and things that I'm doing on a daily basis, because as you know, as a content creator, it's really hard to fake it when you're on screen, especially for the long form content we were doing for 2 to 3 hour live streams, live AMAs and stuff like that. And I think what people really resonated with my own content was that it was very natural, it was very like truthful. We weren't trying to sugarcoat everything. We actually had one specific video that talked about the life cycle of the ICO, talked about how the first half of that ICO life cycle is very speculative. And then once a product comes out, I'll bet that it might not be what you think it is. The classic ICO meme with the horse. The first half, the back half of the horse looks really beautiful, but the first half looks like a child drew it, to illustrate the comparison between product versus idea, right? Your product isn't always going to be as great as you can market it. And sometimes you can market it so much that it comes out and it's kind of a flop. But yeah, so I started doing the hobbyist content over on YouTube in 2017. It was a huge success. I was one of the first original spreadsheet creators, following Ian Bellina, surprisingly enough, who was the original like a spreadsheet guy on YouTube. A top 7 ICO is still in existence today. I think they have 25,000 followers on Telegram. I was one of the first 7 of that top 7. That's where they got their name from. It was an aggregation report of those individuals that were doing that type of work. And my spreadsheet was very technical. It had a lot of coding in it. It really took a lot of things into consideration. It was me thrusting myself into the forefront of the startup world, being able to evaluate these projects in a relatively unknown space, but with historical characteristics to perhaps some of the stuff that hedge funds were doing. So there was a lot of research. You know, we're talking like 16-hour days between researching investment projects, doing study analytics, and analyzing what are making projects so successful right now. Most of it's speculation, market cap expectation, where the market is in general, and perhaps you know, how much hype is behind them. So we knew at a really early stage that a lot of this was a lot of speculation, much different than the 2021 market, where there's a little bit more tangible fundamentals. You actually have to be a project. You actually need to put something out. You can still ride off speculation and sure, people will make money, but if you want to, there's a lot more chance to be sustainable long term because of how robust and mature the Ethereum ecosystem has become. But I met David in 2018, which was probably a life-changing, I would say a life-changing moment for myself. David was, with his expertise and his financial background, is obviously a yin to my yang, if you would, so to speak, from my technical background and my analytical background. So we balance each other really well in terms of the projects that we evaluate. But it wasn't meant to be in 2018. We kept working together and kind of building our network and building towards what would become the 2020 altcoin rally, or the DeFi summer, as some people have labeled it as such. And that's where Marshland was created. Obviously, Matthew Land and David Marshall, putting that together as a culmination. We're both very spiritual people, so it really translates into a lot of our decision making, which is pretty cool. You know, like when negative stuff happens, we actually view it as a sign from the universe, and turn it into a positive. And when positive things are happening, we view it as just a testament to our success of the direction that the universe is pulling us in. So we've had a fantastic opportunity so far to work with some amazing projects. We're most likely, I think, going to market with Manifold as our signature lead project. It's an amazing project that's working in the MEV space, which stands for miner extracted value. And they're basically going to be partnering with the tier 1 DEXs to essentially control their order flow in a way to give traders options, give the traders the option to privatize their transactions and prevent nefarious, almost predatory arbitragers on chain, and turn this into an L2 scalability solution to be able to refund them in terms of transactions costs. So a major issue right now, obviously, is the high transactions on Ethereum. It's been a running joke since 2017. It's pushing users over into the Binance Smart Chain space, and other people who are coming on the rise, because these retail investors and purchasers want to lower their gas fees. So what Manifold allows them to do is lower these failed transaction fees from the arbitragers and then give them money back. There's a few other projects that we're incubating and advising. Sigma Dex is one of them. They're on Polkadot. They'll basically be doing like a DEX on Polkadot. Equibank, obviously another one with the banking sector that David was speaking about, and then specifically our pride and joy, which is LaunchX, which is going to be the first decentralized launchpad that's actually powered by a community governance platform. So, you know, we're really big on giving the power back to the people, as you can see with a lot of the different projects that we're working with. And Marshland has a big connection into the traditional space as well, thanks to David and my experience, and also because of our connections out of Silicon Valley and on the traditional stock market in Canada and London and in New York, right? So we're building a bigger brand. We always talk about how we work harder in the bear market than we do in the bull market, and it's a minimum 10-year vision. And I think a lot of people see, you know, they talk about it all the time, you know, crypto's a bubble, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of those individuals know it's not a bubble. They know that this is a long-term thing, and they're really they know how early we are. So they want to position themselves to capitalize off of it. I think we're one of the few, you know, genuine individuals in the space who will tell you this isn't a bubble. You know, both of us have been here for almost a decade at this point, and we plan to be here for decades to come, because this is the future of finance. This is the future of, as your podcast would talk about, the future of AI and technology, and it's the future of freedom to purchase your way out of oppression from big government. So without this, and in fact, you know, I'm very big, not to rantle on, but I'm very big on technological histogram, in the sense that these technological revolutions go for 40-year periods. You look at the internet, you look at the steam engine. Now, I'll bet these will have leading periods up to it. And I think that we're in the midst of a gigantic movement that could be in comparison, because it's going to change how we operate as a society, and it's going to be the counteraction to bureaucratic corruption that's happening on a government and worldwide level.
Love that. You have so many different points to hit on there, which we'll hit on as many as we can in about the 30 to 40 minutes we have left. But first of all, I got two competitors here on this, right? Poker player, professional sports, right? There's a lot of competition there, but also, as you said, synergistic in how you guys work together. So, you know, really, really fascinating. And we'll talk a little bit more about Marshland Group. I kind of knew, Matt, that you're a little bit of a renegade. I'm here in Los Angeles. You got your Philly gear on, and Philly sports fans are known as renegades to some degree, especially Eagles fans.
Well, we pelted snowballs at Santa Claus once, so you know, it's a rough town, to say the least. They call it Philadelphia. So
yeah, well, you're going to be you're in true form there, right? You're going to maybe look at one of his favorite sons, because I agree with you. This is a long-term play, and we're talking about convergence. Of course, DeFi, crypto, then you bring in AI, eventually bring in quantum, you bring in robotics, AR, VR. The world is going to change so fast. And the pandemic, another name for it is the great acceleration. First of all, it gave CEOs and chief officers at companies and investors really time to stop and think. And then and it really provided the opportunity to reboot, and then money shifted, right? It started to get into the DeFi summer. Obviously, it's been fascinating and amazing, the run that we're on, and we should all knock on wood. We're very lucky. I think part of these origin stories that's so important to tell is that, hey, we're normal people, right? You're normal guys. You know, you worked hard. You know, you developed a spreadsheet on your own. You started to do your own content. That took time. It takes a lot of time. You invested the time. You knew that this was a good market. David, same for you, right? I want to get back to you, David, at some point. And what was that? What was it about crypto and that, you know, the time coming from the open source software side, Linux side to crypto for you? What was it? What was motivating? I'll get there in a sec. But I'm super excited to hear about what you're obviously very meticulous with both what you do. You're visionary, right? You see the long term. So we're going to get, and also you're focusing on the philosophical aspects, not just the money making side. I think I'm getting that out of that. It's not about greed here. It's about changing the world, looking at decentralization of a new way of being, and of course, capitalizing on that along the way. Before we go to Marshland, because that'll be the next question, you guys tell us a little bit about the projects and so forth. David, when that Linux era for you, and then you said you jumped into crypto, what was it? I mean, what were you seeing that got you so excited to go all in?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think really for me, it's always been about a spiritual journey. When I look back at my life, and we all have challenges, and we have ups and downs, and for me, I'd lived very focused for many years on kind of being the best, trying to kind of be number one. And when you're a young guy, that's easy to get focused on that, you know, and actually I was very happy in that. I hear a lot of stories about people saying that, you know, they had these high pressure jobs and earning great money, but they were miserable. I can honestly say that that wasn't the case for me. I loved everything about investing and stuff like that. However, I came to a philosophical point, where, as we all do, particularly when you start having a family, and you need to start analyzing, you know, what's important, you know, what's the purpose of kind of, you know, your existence here on this planet. And you know, for me, it was a moment where kind of I actually got an illness, and I was pretty bad for a while, and that kind of slowed me down. I actually look back, I think spiritually that was because I asked for that change. I kind of was really sort of willing that on, and it kind of gave me that opportunity really to reassess. You know, we talk about that, right? You know, you mentioned about CEOs reassessing through this COVID. Well, that gave me kind of, that was my, if you like, personal COVID. And you know, it was kind of an opportunity me to really analyze, you know, all the things I'd learned and what I really wanted out of life. And it was no longer about money. You know, I think money, what it brings is choice. You know, it gives you the ability to, I mean, they say money changes people. It doesn't. It actually gives you the ability to be the person you always were. And for me, you know, I kind of made a decision where I was relatively young and I was successful, but you know, I had a long path, and I needed to decide, you know, what was the path I was going to take. And so, you know, for a long time, it was kind of, I never really knew what I wanted to do, you know, but I was just sort of like doing stuff I loved and carried on with that. So I never kind of really saw it as a job. It was more kind of, you know, just doing stuff I enjoyed and I was earning from it. So I was really happy with that. When I kind of started hearing about Bitcoin and stuff, it was very early. I think if I look back, it was probably around 2011 was the first time I really heard about it. But, you know, I come from a very traditional background, even though I'm very contrarian by nature. Um, you know, my natural inclination was to reach out to people within the traditional space that could help validate that, because, you know, part of investing, particularly for other people's money, there's always like profiling, you know, risk profiles. You know, you analyze the different, you know, metrics in terms of, you know, is this a good investment? And so, you know, for me, everything cried out it was a terrible investment. So I kind of stayed away from it longer than I would have done, until such point that I guess I had that time through through that kind of illness period where I had time to really research and really decide what I wanted to do. And that was really the time where, you know, Linux IT had been my main focus. And I wasn't really aware particularly of other things outside of that, because I was part of the commercial team trying to help them go to an acquisition. And that was my focus. You know, I helped take them to, you know, a buyout through a larger SI. And, you know, when that was done, I was then, what do I do next? And then I had this bout of sickness, and, you know, I kind of decided, you know, I needed to really analyze what I wanted in life. And then when I'd kind of dealt with some of those demons, guess what? All of a sudden a door opened, and that door was cryptocurrency. And it was an opportunity for me to really, you know, to kind of really embrace something for the first time and just put all my energy into it. And to be honest, since that period of ill health, I've lived my whole life focused around the energy of opportunity, as opposed to the financial side of opportunity. And you know, when you live by that kind of guideline, it makes life a lot easier. It takes a lot of stress out of you. It kind of gives you that bigger picture approach. I think along the way you have mentors too, you know, and sometimes you don't necessarily see them as mentors until maybe after the fact. But I had some great people that I reached out to when I was in that sort of down, that dark moment, where you really doubt many things and question kind of why you and all these different things. And I reached out to those guys, and, you know, I learned from them because I was very open. I think that's the big thing in life, you know, to really change and develop. I think you have to be very open, you know, that there's a level of humility with that. Sometimes, you know, bad health or situations in life really humble you. And you know, that was a real change for me. It didn't change in terms of being successful as such financially, but what it did was, I guess it created a clarification in my mind of what my journey on this life was all about. And that was really about putting the success and the knowledge and the experiences that I've had to benefit not only me, but my family, but then have a wider view. And so I think it's fair to say that Matt and I have a very clear focus around doing good for humanity, but I think help put ourselves in a position where we're good. And then from that base, we want to do good for others. You know, I could have retired many times over, and, you know, financially, I don't need any more money, to be honest. And Matt and I are both in that situation. We've been very fortunate, you know, by, I guess, taking opportunities when they come along. However, you know, we have bigger aspirations to do a lot more for other people. And, you know, that's God willing. And, you know, with good luck, I think that's really the plan.
Yeah, well, I'm loving these origin stories, guys. You know, there's various levels of people here on the SingularityNet community that many are inspired, of course, inspired by Dr. Ben Goertzel's vision of decentralized, benevolent AI to help support humanity. But I can see your vision, and I love learning about you two as people, because it makes me want to know so much more about Marshland Capital too, because we're understanding where you're coming from. And as far as manifesting and seeing the signs are concerned, I definitely live my life from that perspective, and understanding, as you did, David, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. As you kind of learn those lessons, you know, after the fact, all really, really fascinating. And for those of you that are looking for the technical side of this conversation, you know, in this world where there's a lot of deep fakes and fake news and everything else, it's good to know people first and be open and understand. And now we'll get into that side now, but I really appreciate, thank you both for sharing with us there. I think that was fascinating stuff. Let's talk about Marshland. We'll get to the crypto market in a second. Maybe actually, could you both, and Matt, I'll start with you. Could you both weave in to what Marshland is doing, what you're investing in? Matt, you gave us a little preview of that a few minutes ago. Can you also weave in why and where we're at in the state of the market? Because obviously you're investing in things now for a reason, and you see the market. So Matt, tell us about Marshland and what you're doing, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, I'll start with Marshland and then talk about the general market, because that's a little more confusing, I think, for many people that aren't, like, you know, bleeding into it every day. But yeah, I mean, Marshland from a high level, there's a big need in this space. A lot of these tier one funds who we work with all the time, there's nothing wrong with them, but a lot of them, they deploy capital and then they kind of move on. They open some doors, they provide some services or whatever, but there's a large need that's not being filled in these investor cap tables with a lot of these different founders that, you know, I always joke with them, we've had 50, 100, whatever amount of raises we've worked with. This is your first one. So they don't have the experience in this world. It's much different than the traditional startup space. It's kind of who you know, not what you know, a little bit. And they need access to networks. They need access to people who have that experience, like us. So, you know, we step in. It depends on what stage we're stepping in, but we'll step in early ideation, like pre-cap table. We can step in late stage as well and provide value on that level as well. So we're deploying capital, but we also take advisory and incubation agreements depending on the bandwidth. For us, we're looking for quality projects to work with. So there's a number of funds that use like a spray and pray method, and they're deploying capital in anything that can potentially speculatively do well. For us, we take a longer term vision, and we're kind of working with bigger projects. So if you look at the Manifold, for example, that's a very technical project, a lot of integration partners, you know, dealing with a team that's very dev focused, which is another thing in crypto, having these dev focused teams. There's only a handful of, as I would refer to as, competent CMOs. So you actually find a lot more marketing agencies who can fill certain roles, whether it be community management, whether it be authoring, you know, authoring articles, or whether it be circulating those articles to individuals. But for us, in terms of Marshland, we really look at things as an extension of your team, you know, and depends on obviously on that agreement. But, you know, we'll come in, we'll talk with them about product fit. We'll talk about them about, you know, what's saturated in the market, what's early trend, what's actively trending. We talk to them about token dynamics and cap tables. What are the average performances that are happening with certain projects that are recently listing into the market? We educate them on the market shifts in terms of trends that are happening with different dexes, in terms of Uniswap and SushiSwap versus 2017. Some people may have been in the market since 2017, so they're little kind of outdated and need to come up with to the times with what DeFi represents. We have white labeled services, so we can bring in top tier Silicon Valley like headhunters who can bring in, you know, Solidity developers or full stack developers for more longer term engagements. We have inroads to not only those services, but also traditional Silicon Valley incubators that are more on an international presence. We can help post sale products, structure IPO and equity raises, and we think that that's going to be a big thing over the next 5 to 10 years. We're on the forefront of that, which most of our competitors can't even hold a candle to us. But there's a number of different things. You know, incubation, advisement, investment is at the core of our theses in terms of the activities that we're doing on day to day. And we're just really hands on. Like, most people are just not caring about these projects. They put their money in, and maybe they do some light management and hope for the best because they have so much stuff spread out. We're a little bit more focused on making sure that the people that we're partnering are of quality, that we can bring them to market, and that we're doing the hands-on activities so they can actually get real value versus kind of some of the more superficial value that you're getting in some of these early rounds. So, you know, it's all about what you're bringing to the project when they're doing these cap table raises. Everyone has to bring in something. It's not like before where it's like, oh, I'll do a public ICO, or I'll have a bunch of people sell tokens because I'm selling like $20 million worth. Raises are a lot more competitive nowadays. They're a lot more limited. Most people are raising between the 2.5 and $4 million range versus the 20 or 30 or $40 million range. There's vesting now, which is something that came around in the 2018, 2019 market because people couldn't sustain their float. Float stands for like circulating tokens and tokens in circulation at launch. So there's a lot of different dynamics that have changed in terms of the market overall. This is kind of a running joke, but a lot of people are like, okay, are we in the super cycle, right? There's a lot of institutional support. One could argue that we're going to break out of this historic 4-year trending periods based on the halving of Bitcoin. And I think that there's a lot of philosophical, like game theory points that you can touch on. Like I'm probably in the minority that thinks that Ethereum has the opportunity to flip Bitcoin perhaps this cycle, right? And that comes from the sense that eventually, if not already, Ethereum has or will have all the characteristics that Bitcoin has. It will be immutable, or it's immutable, it's censorship resistant. They're going to cap the supply. They're trying to decentralize it in the same way of pivoting their foundation away from the centralization of the project. They're actually going to POS, which you could argue maybe is more or less centralized than the mining structure that's happening on Bitcoin right now. There's a lot of different things you could talk about, but the major difference is that Ethereum has an ecosystem that's scaling on it for products that don't care about time, meaning that like blockchain is not efficient to scale against Visa currently. Someone asked me what the watershed moment of crypto was. I said it was when we have a decentralized currency that's backed by one of these currencies. So Bitcoin would be like a stable coin that's backed by Bitcoin. We actually have one. It's called DAI, right? That's the first stable currency that's actually backed by a cryptocurrency that's this deflationary type of thing, like Ethereum is. But Ethereum will eventually take all of those characteristics of Bitcoin, but there's a whole ecosystem being built on it as well. There's a lot of excitement from both the retail and investment community. So it just makes sense that, you know, Bitcoin will be a foundational layer, and that Ethereum can do the same, if not much, much more. So when we see that, we see a lot of potential upside, but I don't see a super cycle per se, just because of how small of a percentage of the population still actively understand or own crypto. You spoke about, I think, banks earlier. When will they adopt? When will they adopt some sort of crypto in your bank account? We're already seeing that with neobank solutions like Equify and EquiBank, and we already know that the Morgan Stanleys of the world and all these guys are just they're not even on the sidelines anymore. Before in 2017 they were actively flooding crypto while accumulating it. Now they're actively publicly saying that they're in it. So they're normalizing the narrative at this point. We're seeing PayPal and Visa come on board as well. So it's a matter of when, not if. But I think that we still need to go through another cycle into the next cycle. So, most likely this will be the year where we see some sort of parabolic growth. I do believe sometimes that historically you think something's going to happen because of a trend. Typically that's when we deviate. So there is a chance for that. But I still think that we'll see a bear market probably next year, like per normal, or maybe in the next 2 years. So that does play a factor into our investment strategy, especially with vesting. A lot of the early stages, kind of how many multipliers can I get for a base floor, like 2x, 3x, whatever, off your initial. But if I'm getting locked up for a year plus, that's going to take a factor into what my outlook is. This doesn't play into the general market. This plays into the pre-sale investment market on the fund level and the strategic level. And we're starting to see some vesting apply to the public as well. But yeah, I think that the market's still massively undervalued in general, whether we see a bear market or not. And that's purely derived from the fact of how many people are in crypto today, and how many people can we acquire, and what will that acquisition rate look like in terms of exponential growth when we get into the banking sectors adopting this as a full-fledged, or we see the United States adopt their own digital currency because they have to compete with someone like China, right? So just a foregone conclusion for me. And the simple points, we're undervalued. There's still much more to go. And that's why David and I are here for the next 10 plus years.
Yeah, good summary there. The global real estate market is $220+ trillion, and the global crypto market is 1.8 trillion now. So there's obviously real estate's the number one asset. The best investment on earth is Earth. But also this digitization, digital twins, digital currency, 1.8 trillion or whatever it's at today is not enough, right? It's gonna go up significantly. And you said a whole bunch of stuff there. I'm gonna defer one of those questions to David, but the one that really stuck out. And by the way, great answer. So many things there. We could do a whole series, like do Lord of the Rings with this, with everything you just said.
We'll have to come back on, yeah.
Return of the King. So this cycle, Ethereum, first of all, before I ask this, we're not financial advisors. Anybody that's watching this, make sure that you contact your own financial advice. Make sure you contact professionals to get advice from. Obviously, there's some investment at Marshland that's happening here, but contact your financial advisor. Ethereum, Bitcoin, this cycle flip.
Is that for me?
No, actually, that one's for Matt, and I'm going to come back to you with another one. Yeah. I'll tee you up in a sec.
Yeah, I think that there's a chance. It's more likely to happen in the next bull cycle. If Ethereum can obviously stay relevant. Same goes for Bitcoin. But I see no reason why it shouldn't be able to. Bitcoin has first mover advantage. Bitcoin has the notoriety among the traditional space, but anyone with two halves of a brain can understand that. No offense to the Bitcoin maxis out there, and I've debated Tone Vase about this as well during conferences, but anyone with half a brain can see that there's a lot more happening on Ethereum than Bitcoin. And the power of blockchain technology allows those dApps to plug into the L1 layer from a security perspective. With Bitcoin, I have to go out to like RSK or some sort of L2 layer, and then I'm trusting on their security. It's not powered by Bitcoin, and that's a choice that the Bitcoin developers made. The choice that they made was that it's fine on its own and it is what it is. And I think it's a perfect choice to make. But we look back at what innovation has looked like in the technology sector. And this isn't about currency. I think that's the thing that's missed, right? It's about store value, not currency.
Right.
And because it's about store value, we ask ourselves, can Ethereum be a store value? And the answer is absolutely yes. Especially because Vitalik is trying to promote developers to create financial sinks on Ethereum, where they're basically locking up tokens in the expectation of yield, and locking up that Ethereum, including DAI, which is a massive lockup in itself. Locking up that Ethereum promotes more scarcity, and it shows that people are finding the value in it. They're willing to lock their asset up in exchange for potential future APY. Something that Bitcoin just can't even hold a candle to at this point, because they choose not to. No one wants to build on Bitcoin. It's inefficient to. It's not designed to, right? And because of that, you have to ask yourself, okay, well, if Ethereum can be everything that Bitcoin can be and more, then why is it only worth 1/4 of its value? That's ludicrous, right? So I think the entrepreneurs of tomorrow will see that Ethereum and other altcoins have the potential to potentially lead here. And I think the question may be more, or maybe less, whether Ethereum can flip Bitcoin, and more whether how much Bitcoin's market share is going to be diluted. That's really the more important question, because for Ethereum to flip Bitcoin, you would be assuming that the alternatives to Ethereum would just drop by the wayside, because that market share would need to flow into it. And I think that because of the high gas fees and the exclusion of retail traders, you're seeing people go over to alternative options that they don't really care about certain aspects. Like you talk about Vitalik's trilemma, security, decentralization, whatever. It's been a while since I looked up specifically what it was, but it's not decentralized if you're sacrificing one of these three things. That's how they basically look at it over on Ethereum. People are not caring about that as much, right? They're saying, okay, well, is there some sort of decentralization there? They see the hypocrisy with mining in general. Like we had a power outage and somewhere in China, and all of a sudden 50% of the hash rate drops. Like that doesn't sound very decentralized to me, considering they're the ones who are protecting the network and would be a 51% resilient, right? You're opening yourself up to risk. But at the end of the day, it's not, there's not a good incentive to attack Bitcoin, because the people who would be attacking it, it would actually, they would lose more money than make it. But digressing from that, yeah, I think the answer to your question from my perspective is that we see almost a savage shredding of the Bitcoin market cap, because it's not the same as 2017. It's not like things have to flow through Bitcoin and out. Now things flow into the altcoins pretty direct due to the fiat on-ramps. You have these multiple different stable coins that have evolved and made themselves more relevant, including USDC, and that trading is very prevalent in terms of propping up the market, almost like a central bank, if you would, like a DeFi central bank. And then, yeah, I think that Ethereum is way better than Bitcoin. I think all these alternatives are even better than Bitcoin if they can prove themselves to be relevant. It'll be exciting to see what happens when DOT comes out. We see Solana building a Rust-based system exclusively at Rust-based, and then they'll have Wormhole. And I think the biggest thing that people are missing is that we're heading towards a massive interoperable economy, right? And that's a foregone conclusion. It's no longer going to be, oh, do I launch on Ethereum? Do I launch on Binance Smart Chain? Do I launch on Solana? It's going to be, I'm an aggregator who's going to launch you on all of them, right? Mm-hmm. Except for Bitcoin, because you can't launch on Bitcoin because it sucks, right? And this is coming from someone who Bitcoin changed his life, right? I literally, you can look right behind me. I have a gigantic Bitcoin poster in my room, and I still support Bitcoin because Bitcoin is a means to financial freedom. It's a means to remove yourself from that oppression that I spoke about earlier. It's a way for you to take back your own financial responsibility, and with great power comes great responsibility. But we shouldn't be these cult-like mentality leaders, such as Tone and others. We shouldn't be these cult-like mentality leaders saying that we only accept, one truth, right? Technology and science and religion has evolved over many centuries, and it will continue to evolve. And to be closed-minded and say only one is the true answer is ignorance at its purest form. So yeah, I think that Ethereum is better than Bitcoin. I think it'll continue to become better than Bitcoin. I think that the people who are running Bitcoin have no aspirations to make it better than Ethereum. And I think that we're going to see over time a dilution of the market cap, because we're seeing a very emerging market growing. And Bitcoin has had a large lion's share of that for a while because it was the only thing provably true. But now we sit here in 2021 and we can say that for good certainty that Ethereum is provably true and evolving. So it's exciting times.
Yeah, obviously powering the NFT market over the past couple months as well, seeing the new kind of different usage of blockchain, but still there in the background. And so many great things you said there. I really appreciate that. And it's fascinating, with the AGI token, which is part of the SingularityNet ecosystem, which was built, launched primarily on Ethereum and now moving to ADA, Cardano, because it's more technically proficient as well. And of course, Ethereum 2.0 has a lot of promise. It's just a matter of when that comes out. But you're right, the technical proficiencies make sense as far as value. Thanks for that, David. I'll go back to one other thing that Matt said. and I'll go back to Marshland on this one. You're funding, but so altcoin projects, other types of projects that are around DeFi, obviously crypto. What makes a quality project for Marshland? Like, what do you look for in projects? There are so many now, and it sounds like you're seeing a lot of them. But what's a good project for you to fund these days?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think some of the clear things that we look for when analyzing investments are no different to every kind of sector when it comes to traditional crypto. And it first starts off with the people. We're big believers in being kind of the forefront, or at least taking that kind of leadership position. So we talk about CEOs being the driving force, the kind of the if you like, the pivotal spokesperson or driving force behind a company, whether that's the ethos of the company, they set the standard, right, for everyone else to follow. And so one of the things we really look for is when we talk to people is, does this person sound like they really have a vision? Do they have a backstory? What's their motivation? That's the key to start with. You take certain things as a general acceptance. We do a lot of research behind the technology, who's maybe on the tech side of things, but for us, a CEO, the first thing we have to do is, when we analyze it, we sit down, we find out who this person is, what's their backstory, even to a point where we really want to understand, how did they come about their name, what's the story behind the name. There's iterations. Yeah, lights just come on, so it's dark here. I knew it'd come on at some point. But
it's almost 10 o'clock there now, isn't it?
Yeah. And so yeah, when we first look at projects, we always look at the person, like the face. We're in a different world than we ever used to be. Once upon a time, the brand was the thing. That's no longer. The name, sort of like the leaders of those companies are bigger than the brand. We look at Elon Musk as an example, where most people have heard of Elon Musk, and they probably don't always necessarily know who he works for. Maybe not so much now because he's such a big name, but Richard Branson is a really good example. There's so many different company leaders out there, and people really want to buy from people. People really want to be emotionally connected to people that they're engaging with, and we're no different. We're creatures of habit. We're, as Matt and I have discussed, we're very spiritually led people, and that means we have some form of alignment with it. So most of the time we'll go into these types of meeting and really wanting to know more about that person, their motivations, and from that you get a general, I guess, a sense of, is there alignment between us and them? And that's the key thing here. That's the key kind of first ingredient. And then from that base, we have a really good assessment as to whether to take that conversation further, and I think ultimately that's how the world should be. We take our business as important as if it was a family member. We really care about the people we work with. Matt and I are very deep emotional people. We care about what we say. We mean what we say. We'll give our projects literally everything that we've got. So we just need to find out that, are they the type of people that really appreciate that, and do they realize, I guess, what opportunity there is in terms of engagement with us. And I think if there's not alignment there, then it's good for us not to engage. There's somebody for everyone, right? so it starts there. It definitely starts there. I think they obviously have to have a vision. Matt mentioned about having a real focus on high level things. Like for us, we have an aspiration of where we want to be. And for us, Marshland is just the start of growing something pretty big. We want to build to a point where we're impacting positively on multiple people's lives, and we have we have a lot of things in terms of future development and ideas and plans, and a lot of that is really about social impact. I think that's really important in the world we live in. So many people are going through difficult periods of time. I think one of the alignment points actually for Matt and I is we've had tough times. Matt had some real challenges when he was young. I've had some real challenges myself. I think that helps define you. I think there's an element of becoming some form of, humble from that. And then you build yourself back up. And, Matt and I are not the finished article. We're continuing to grow. We're continuing to develop ourselves as human beings, but also as kind of business people. And we help each other along the way. There's never a day we're not learning something a little bit more about each other. And, we want to put that into the people we work with, So I think if there's an appetite for people to engage with that type of people, that kind of culture, then we're all for it. We're all in. And, I think we're lovers of people, genuinely. We really care about the humanity. I think we're both contrarians by nature. I think without putting labels on it, we are genuinely libertarians in the sense that we believe everyone should have the liberty to make choices and decisions for themselves, as long as it's for the good and it doesn't harm others. And cryptocurrency really embodies so many different things. I genuinely think it's going to be the most impactful thing that's ever happened on the planet, because it has so many different crossovers from, just impact on humanity. Everyone's going to be doing it. Everyone's going to have some interaction, with cryptocurrency, blockchain. Its technology is advancing. AI is a big part of that. Quantum computing. All of these things are fundamental to change. I'm a big fan of Elon Musk and some of those guys that are coming out of Silicon Valley. We have some really good connections there. I know Ben's a big proponent of the value and the kind of real intrinsic benefits of AI and quantum computing can have, and not only in technology but also for humanity. And I think we're going through an evolutional phase, one of those real big ones that we kind of go through from time to time as humans, right? And I think this we're at the cusp of that, and cryptocurrency and blockchain are pivotal. So it's really exciting to be in that space. I genuinely think that when we look at people and when we start engaging in projects, we generally want to be looking at seeing some of these guys that are going to have as much impact as someone like Elon Musk, genuinely speaking. And that is as much a feeling as a factual thing. I think you can only assess so much on paper, but we can feel way more. And I think as human beings, we've kind of lost a little bit of that, where we think too much and maybe you don't feel as much. And I've been doing that for a long time. That's, I guess, my spiritual journey started when I had kind of more time to really work with people and kind of, I guess, be mentored. I'm a big proponent on really feeling into the energy of a project and the people behind it. That I would say that's the most crucial thing for me, for sure.
Awesome. I just met you both 10 minutes before the call, and I really appreciate you both being so open about the challenges you've had in life, but also about, how you look at the philosophy. And I think that's going to help a lot of people here. It's really fascinating, and I agree with much of what you're saying. So we could go on, we could go Lord of the, but I have, this is Singularity. It's obviously Decentralized Economy podcast. So I want to get in an AI question,
Sure.
Or an AI, I guess your AI thoughts, put it that way. Obviously, AI, we're in artificial narrow intelligence right now, where a lot of narrow AIs basically do human tasks, and some of them are getting better than humans at them, whatever it might be, from counting things to cutting things. And AGI is artificial general intelligence, when basically AI is as smart as any one human in their profession on the planet, the best architect, the best doctor, the best scientist. And of course, artificial super intelligence, as Dr. Goertzel has said, is when all bets are off and AI is spinning off 8, 10 plus Nobel Prize winning ideas every second. And as humans, we won't be able to conceptualize. So let's put that one aside. But SingularityDAO is a project that's spinning off of SingularityNet. I believe you might have heard of some of it. And basically it's AI trading dynamic indexes of altcoins to group them together and make them more liquid, for starters, because the plan there is to use AI in many terms, in many ways. What do you see for, whether it's a SingularityDAO or another use case of it, what do you see AI doing with crypto in the near future?
Yeah, well, let me first off start by saying, like, anything that Ben is involved in, you have to take notice of. He's an iconic figure in the space when it comes to AI and those kind of technologies that spin out of it. So, you know, when we became aware of SingularityNet back in 2017, 18, you know, it did phenomenally well. You know, we're obviously hearing about the SingularityDAO spin-off and you know, the real kind of community-driven side of that, and then obviously the technology that's coming from that, which is, as you mentioned, looking at, you know, this AI and quantum computing kind of focus around really trying to analyze different, I guess, criteria when it comes to selecting and working with different types of cryptocurrencies through some form of, you know, very high level indexing structure. You know, that's really exciting, you know, because we live in an age where information has never been more abundant, and yet at the same time, it's so difficult to really drill down and get accurate data. You know, we know about this so much, right? When we talk from a political perspective, you know, fake news and all this stuff, you know, I guess ultimately, you know, you are what you think, right? You are what you see, what you read. And for us, when it comes to, from the investment perspective, you know, data is the most important thing when it comes to analyzing and then executing on that information. And so, you know, I think it's going to be almost a no-brainer when it comes to projects like SingularityDAO that are creating this, if you like, synergistic, futuristic process that will analyze all of this data, as you mentioned, you know, faster than the human being could ever imagine. From a fund management background myself, you know, our decision making was very focused on our analyst teams, and you know, those guys were absolutely, you know, pivotal to our execution and successes when it came to, you know, realizing the profits of investments. And you know, now we're in this age where, you know, things change at a split second, and in the cryptocurrency sector, as we know, things move so fast, you know, to a point where, you know, just a year ago, we probably would never have believed we are where we are today, even though we all kind of saw the future, but you still don't fully know what that future looks like. You know, you have a view of what it could, but it's always slightly different. And, you know, I almost believe that, you know, probably 2 or 3 years from now, you know, funds like ourselves who are running index investment funds right now within our own ecosystem will be using some form of AI tool to analyze at split second and nanoseconds, you know, what's changing in the market, you know, what investments are kind of doing well, why are they doing well, why aren't they doing well, you know, and that's crucial, and that just has so much impact on everything else, right? So yeah, I mean, we're super excited about knowing, you know, what these guys at SingularityDAO are doing. You know, we know they're good guys. We know they come with an incredible value background. You know, Ben and his team have been successful already. That's a big criteria. You know, you mentioned earlier about what do we look for in possibly investments. Well, you know, if you've been successful before, you know, that's a really good primer. We already know these guys are great. You know, we've had some interactions with Ben and some of the guys at the team, and so I certainly think that if there's an opportunity to invest and engage with those guys, then we'll definitely be all over that, 100%. I think you're muted, Bill.
Coming off you. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, glad to hear you. I've been obviously been interacting with Ben for some time, but Marcelo Mari and Mario Casiraghi, the CFO over at SingularityDAO. I'm not directly involved in that. I'm a kind of a sister company to that, but I'm fascinated by the things that they're doing over there. And let's not forget that it taps into the SingularityNet ecosystem of AI services and agents that the world populates, will continue to upgrade and grow, is not beholden to the number of AI developers or analysts or AIalists that you have on staff. It's going to continue to be part of that SingularityNet innovation. So very cool. Glad you know about that. Well, guys, we have you just killed it today. I learned so much about, you know, the state of cryptocurrency. I think you both would agree we're in the early phases. There's tons of opportunity. Obviously, you're seeing a lot of that opportunity. You gave us some of the technical fundamentals of what to look for, what not to look for, not only in the brand names, but also in the other projects, whether it be an altcoin or utility token and so forth. So I really appreciate your time. I think I'll take you up on having a second follow-up here because there's so much more to talk about. Any final words, Matt? Do you want to, anything else you want to add that maybe you didn't get the chance to?
Yeah, I did want to add a little bit about the AI stuff with SingularityDAO and SingularityNet. So ironically enough, the term singularity, it mentions it references in, I forget the author's name. You'll probably know it more than me, but yeah, it references a point in time in which we can't see past, right? This future where technology has exponentially grown so fast that we can't comprehend what might be behind that door. And I honestly think that I'm very big on futurism, and I'm also big on. I watched this YouTube channel called What If History or Alt History, which is a great YouTube channel if anyone's looking for what if history had gone like this, what would have happened. And he talks about how we're in this period of time right now that's happened twice before. One was in 1850 and one prior to that. It talks about how basically workers' rights and are so diluted, and corruption and bureaucracy is so high, and the ability to care about one another in terms of nations with the US's retreat on a foreign policy perspective, and the expansion of emerging powers. That this is the third time that this has happened in history. And after both times, I believe there was just massive war, and from that we came out of it through a revolution, like a mental revolution. And I think that I think in the future AI is pretty much going to take over everything, and because of that, a lot of people are going to get put out of work, and I think that a lot of people are afraid of that. But I actually think what's going to happen is that we're going to hit a new age of enlightenment where we realize that work is not the primary function of humans, and that there's a different path, and that'll probably come from a lot of technology. Like we will probably be able to create food out of thin air. I know that sounds like crazy. We see it in Star Trek and Star Wars or whatever. You'll be able to create food out of thin air, or at least genetically modify it at a speed in which it's, very cost efficient, and like there's no world hunger anymore, no issues for thirst or whatever. And that really comes from the fact that, you've asked us a lot of questions today. The way I like to describe AI to my friends is basically, if you had the opportunity to think of an answer for 1 year's time and be able to give it in real time, that's the power of AI. As AI grows, you're able to get information and make informed decisions at lightning speed. So we're basically able to traverse the informational barrier that's happening over the next century in a period of years or days or weeks, right? So how does that apply to cryptocurrency, and how does it apply to things like SingularityNet and SingularityDAO? Well, that's basically the future. There's like, we can't sustain ourselves in the data information age, and we can't be able to make those informed decisions without the power of AI and machine learning. And that's why companies like SingularityDAO and SingularityNet as well are so important, because if we want to make informed financial decisions, or make better investments than just ourselves, which we as humans are flawed, then we need to rely on AI technology such as SingularityDAO and SingularityNet that help scale that. So I think it's really exciting what they're doing with the Dynaset and the Sing token stuff, and yield and derivatives and rebalancing are going to be a huge sector in crypto in the near future, because everyone wants to tap into that. Like, I manage my own portfolio. It's a pain in the ass. I spend 2 to 3 hours a week having to go through and rebalancing, and there's really no real option. Like, Balancer's not that great for it. The UI is not. I don't like it. No offense to them, they're a great product for what they are, but it just shows how much we still have to come in the space. So adding an AI component and a team has roots in Silicon and knows what a quality UI looks like and knows what a quality experience looks like, there's nothing poor that I can say about them. I think that it's going to be the future. And I talk about Neuralink all the time as well, not to go too far off, but we have to embed ourselves with that AI technology as well. We're not becoming robotic, we're evolving. And it's part of that enlightenment period, that if we want to benefit from what AI has in store over the next 20, 30 years, to centuries, right? If we want to be able to tap into that and evolve with the AI, then we have to do it in a way that's just streamlined directly into our brain. So it's going to be very interesting to see. We're going to see it in our lifetime. I think by the time the singularity happens, I'll probably be like in my 50s. David will be early 60s. By then, they'll be able to reverse aging, and we can extend ourselves for another few hundred years, hopefully. But yeah, it'll be exciting what AI has in store. It's very exciting to see what crypto is going to gain from it. And there's not a ton of people doing it, so it's an underappreciated market that has potential in growth. So it's exciting to see what SingularityDAO and SingularityNet have in store as part of that journey for a larger ecosystem.
Very well put, both of you. Thank you so much for bringing it full circle back to AI, which is what this community is ultimately all about. But fascinating conversation on crypto and decentralized, and I really appreciate it. So thank you both. Matt Land, David Marshall, Marshland Capital, and a couple of other conglomerate there too. There's more that you do. Really appreciate this conversation. It's been fascinating. Hope to talk to you again. And thank you. Take care. Everybody out there, thanks for watching another episode of Decentralized Economy. We hope you like this one, the state of cryptocurrency. Look for our next episode in the coming weeks. Take care. Have a good one.